back, Fubar here, and today we are doing a video on officer pairings for bombers and fighters. Now, this is going to be a very short video, and the reason why is because there's not a lot of Air Force officers and there's not a lot of potent pairings. So when you first start off in the game, there's not a lot of Air Force officers for both bombers and fighters. However, I'm going to give you the best lowdown on the tips and tricks for this going forward, okay? So please bear with me. All right. So right out the gate, once you first load into the game and you're in the game for the very first time, and you have access to fighters, the most relevant pairing I would recommend is Wings of Glory and Brisk Eagle. This is a very good pairing. However, later in the game, Wings of Glory is going to fall down to a C tier. His skills are not that much to write home about. Brisk Eagle, she is a very flexible officer for both fighter and bomber. So if you were going to awaken either one of these officers, I would recommend you awaken Brisk Eagle, and she is an absolute A tier officer all the way through the game. So the next officer you get in the beginning of the game that is for fighter is the Witcher, and you get her from the San Francisco event. She's an absolute juggernaut for both fighter planes and bombers, and I would recommend her as an S tier. She's solely defensive and dodging, and her best combination for a fighter is with Silver Comet. They both go in sync very well, and if you're going to use this pair, I would recommend using them on a modern fighter. If you can't, I would recommend the next would be a Liberty fighter. And then in the worst case scenario and you just had to use it, I would recommend it on a Vanguard fighter. Okay? Now, both of these officers you get relatively early in the game. They're both worth awakening. They make a very strong officer pairing going through. Then the next officer you get is Polar Phantom, who you get at 182 days. He is S tier, so is Silver Comet, and so is Witcher. Now, he is awesome, but he will not have a good pairing until later, which will be Bladewing. Bladewing and Polar Phantom are an absolute beast on the battlefield, but you unfortunately get Bladewing after 300 days. So with that said, Bladewing is an absolute juggernaut. He slows down the target, and while Polar Phantom counters the other fighters there, and he increases the patrol speed. So this is meant Bladewing and Polar Phantom are meant to be eradicating other fighters. They'll do all right against bombers, but they're meant for eradicating fighter planes. This pairing is an absolute godsend in S tier. Okay, and I tell you right now, I saw one of my alliance members using this combo, and they were just shredding through all the fighters there that were of equal power or lower. Okay, so this pairing is very, very good. So is Polar Silver Comet and also Witcher. This is another S tier pairing, and these are the only two pairings I would actually recommend on fighter planes after you have reached the point from the beginning to a 100. I mean to 300 days. Those are the best two combos if you're gonna have run two fighters, one bomber. Now on to bombers. Bombers. Right when you start. Oh wait, we missed the Air Force officer. This is a D tier. There's no much more that I can say about it. He's the worst fighter plane officer in the game. He looks really good on paper, but you just don't have that much of a scenario where you're going to use him, because a lot of people would use him to tank bases while their Liberty bomber would go in behind go in behind it. But that meta has shifted very, very hardly, and now he has lost his use. All right, so Golden Pixie S tier. She gives you an extra bombing run. She does a lot of good support with bombers. So she is an S tier officer, and I would recommend her with Brisk Eagle. Both of these officers you get in the start of the game, and that's where I would recommend your pairings be. So you should be good on a she would be good on a Liberty Bomber, Martyr Bomber, or Vanguard, but you got to know the difference between them. Liberty is for taking out bases and using it on base defense for taking out large groups of artillery rallies or AG groups. And now Vanguard is used for taking out solo artillery pieces, and then Martyr is meant for taking out armor. Even though Vanguard and Martyr do a good job of taking out tanks and artillery pieces, but the difference is those are the only two bomber units that will track and follow the target. El Cartero, you get him after 182 days, and he is best paired at this point in time with Brisk Eagle. And El Cartero is an S tier officer as far as bombers go. He What he does is he stuns and sets the troop on fire. He does good damage, and he is an absolute juggernaut. He can stun him for 2 seconds, and yeah, he gives him a tick damage of 400 damage coefficient when awakened, and also, yeah, he does 1350 damage coefficient, and he can affect multiple targets if you're using him on a Liberty Bomber, and therefore he can set them all on fire, stunning them and immobilizing them for 2 seconds. Very good, very potent. Now, Rictus Reaper. Rictus Reaper recently got a rework in a recent patch, and now he does more damage. He is very valuable. He does 1,000 damage coefficient, and he does a damage buff for each bombing run up to 18%. I mean, at 18%. So each time he goes by, he goes up by 18%. But you usually get 3 to 4 bombing runs as is, so he would be best paired with El Cartero, and I would use him on a Vanguard bomber or a Martyr bomber, and he is an S tier because he is an exclusive and he's very hard to get. But he also recovers your health every time you kill a unit within a unit. So that means each individual unit you will gain health recovery, and that is very good for bombers, especially Vanguard and Martyr, that are targeting single unit because there's tons of fighters up in the air. So he is an absolute beast. And also, after completing a bombing run, this officer's bomber drops an additional bomb, dealing massive damage, a damage coefficient of 2,500. And it also can be spread to additional targets if you're using the Liberty Bomber. And it also increases the patrol speed by 20% for 10 seconds. So that means once this drops, he's getting the hell out of Dodge very quickly to rearm and go back out, and also to get out of the way before enemy fighters catch on what's going on. So this is my pairings for the fighter plane and the bomber if you are, as I said, through those stages. So the recap, after you're at 300 days, Polar Phantom, Silver Comet and Witcher for one fighter pair, preferably Martyr Bomber. Then Bladewing and Polar Phantom on a Vanguard fighter, preferably. Then on either a Vanguard or Martyr Bomber, I recommend El Cartero, Rictus Reaper, and if you can't get Rictus Reaper, Brisk Eagle. If you're using a Liberty Bomber for taking out units, I recommend Golden Pixie and El Cartero. If you are just taking out bases with a Liberty Bomber, you're going to want to use Golden Pixie and Rictus Reaper. Okay? So that is my pairings for fighter planes and also bombers at the 300-day threshold that I can recommend. All right, guys, if you thought this video was helpful and you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and subscribe. We also have a community Discord up, so please join the community. It's a giant information hub. If you're a content creator, let me know. Join the community, and you can post your content there. So, with all that said and done, this is Fubar. I got your 6. Peace.